I wanted to officially introduce Mark Custer of Yale University and Susan Pyzynski of Harvard University. Probably the two people in the world that know more about the new ArchivesSpace user interface than anybody else. So they're going to be sharing with you some information about what the new features are, how it works. Some of you are also going to be attending a workshop that Mark and Susan are leading this afternoon that'll be kind of a more deep dive into some of these features. And one of the great benefits of the workshop that they're doing, even though not everyone can be in it, is that they're producing some great documentation that you'll be able to refer to later as you implement the public user interface. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark and Susan.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Mark Custer. I'm an archivist and metadata coordinator at the Pyzynski Library. Standing here with me is Susan Pyzynski, head of technical services at the Houghton Library. I wouldn't want to give this presentation without Susan, literally by my side right now, since Susan and I have been working side by side on this project for the past 2 years. And because of that, Susan and many others at Harvard have been instrumental to the success of this project in a variety of ways. First off, I should mention that it was just 1 week ago today, on July 18th, that Laney packaged up the ArchivesSpace 2.1 release and made it available for download. The very next day, Christine sent out the official announcement. Therefore, I can officially say now that I'm very, very happy that the new public interface is available. It took about a year longer than I expected when we started off, and before I hand things over to Susan, who will give a preview of some of the new exciting features, I want to highlight a few key moments in the project. According to my records and my own take on the story, I trace things back to Halloween 2014, when Chris Prom circulated the Illinois report to the ArchivesSpace listserv, which included changes that Illinois wanted to see in both the staff and public interface. About 1 month later, on December 1st of that year, I approached Brad Westbrook and Chris Prom about the possibility of really kickstarting the enhancement of the public interface. 6 months from then, a 14-member working group was formed to assist a design firm, the Cherry Hill Company, to come up with a full list of requirements, recommendations, design compositions, and wireframes. Since it was important for us to keep things user-focused, the group conducted usability tests that fall at Harvard, Rice, and Yale University on the original ArchivesSpace public interface. In December, our work with Cherry Hill wrapped up, and shortly thereafter, the development process started. In the fall of 2016, Harvard conducted 7 more usability tests on the developing code base, and just like the usability test from the previous year, those results helped to inform the direction that the remaining development would take. In November of last year, we also contracted with the web company WebAIM to test the code base against general web accessibility guidelines. And throughout 2016 and 17, our core group held development calls every 2 weeks, which we conducted with a video conferencing tool. Sadly, I didn't have the foresight to record those meetings, so I wasn't able to grab a screen capture from one of those calls in preparation for this presentation in order to illustrate to everyone how our group communicated in a style that was reminiscent of the Brady Bunch's opening sequence. But hopefully you'll get the idea from this image. And I want to give an extra special thanks to Laney, you see her represented in the upper left, Mark Triggs from Hudson Malanglo, Bobby Fox, who in this case is represented by a sketch of a Dalek, since that was the icon she would use when she would join the calls without a web camera. Christine, James Bolin, and Peyton Giles, also of Hudson Malanglo, who, like Mark, would join every call despite the fact that the majority of those started at 7 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And finally, you should recognize Susan here. So that she can discuss some of the fruits of all of this work, I'll now turn things over to Susan so she can give you a demo.
I love that picture that Mark did. I have to admit, it's Mark, it's been 2 years. I see Mark more than I see many people I work with down the hall. I don't actually know after today what I'm going to do with myself. So what I'm going to do is a brief demo of the some of the highlights and features of the new ArchivesSpace public interface, and just talk a little bit about what some of the development was. Obviously, you see, sorry, I need my glasses, the front page. I will talk about this later, but right now this is your welcoming front page. It is all completely customizable, and if you will be talking more about that in the workshop this afternoon. I want to show a little bit of the searching and display for you. So in this case, I'm doing a search on John as a creator, and then the ability to do a more refined search. You can see by the screen that you're also able to do things by limit by years and things like that. So here are the search results. This is our test data, by the way, just so you know. So if you think, wow, that some of this data looks a little weird, it's because we added some stuff when we were doing testing. So you can see search all record types where the creator contained John and correspondence, so it shows you what you've searched on. In this case, I got just 2 hit results in both collections, but it would have brought up any archival objects or anything like that. I'd like to point out on the right-hand side that the filter results, and you are able to filter on your search results. In this case, the filters are pretty short, but after 6, it will show a more link, and you are able then to open, so accordion style, and see more filters, but we want to try and leave that as compact as possible. It shows the title, the identifier, and then an overview of scope and contents. It does, as you can see, the long scope and contents. We decided to have it do the ... rather than show, since some people have very long scope and content notes. It also shows where it was found in and starts showing you some breadcrumbs right away. You can sort by relevance. In this case, obviously, with 2 results, we don't need to worry. So here we've called up a collection, and this is where you really start seeing some big differences with the new public user interface. In particular, you have not only your breadcrumbs, we also have these 3 tabs, which I'll get back to. What I first wanted to show you was, rather than trying to display everything, we've done a navigation on the right-hand side, accordion style. We have a huge, it took us like over a year to decide how to even do this. We went back and forth a lot with the accordion and finally ended up deciding to do indentation. We looked at a lot of different options. I'm not sure any of them made us 100% happy, but this is what we ended up going with. But you can expand, and then through indentation it will carry it out. You also can move this about, so if you have a really complicated finding aid, you can move the accordion in and out, as you can see. And then I can't get out of it. There we go. Thank you. I was like, oh my God. You can tell I've become a Mac user, haven't you? Yeah. The other things I wanted to show is we now have these 3 icons: citation, request, and print. The citation is one of my favorites. I think it's a really neat little, but this gives the opportunity for the patron to immediately see a citation and what should be cited for the collection, and the ability to copy it, which is a really nice feature. The request is there and configurable. Ideally, if you have Aon, you can configure it so it works with Aon. You can also configure it to have it send an email if you're on Aon or don't have a circulation management system. The print I'm not going to press in case it takes a really long time, but this gives you a chance to pull up a PDF on the fly of the finding aid, and I encourage people to go look at that. It's really good. The other thing, talking now about the display, is you immediately default to the collection overview. This gives you the front matter to a collection and also the ability to expand more of the front matter. The idea being that we were looking for something that would pretty much stay short and make it easy for a user to immediately know if they're interested in this collection rather than hit them with a lot of information. You can also just expand just part of it, or expand all of it and then collapse all of it. And this gives you all the various front matter plus the subject and the creator name. But, of course, we still are very fond of scrolling through the entire finding aid. Mark and I had quite a big discussion about this, and I told him I would get fired if we didn't have this tab. So for a while he was referring to this as Susan's display. So if you want to name it after me, go for it. So the collection organization gives you the opportunity to scroll through the entire collection using the scroll bar and to see everything. And this is for those people who really are fond of just seeing everything on the front page. As you can see, as we scroll through, it moves along the navigation bar too. So the navigation is context sensitive. I just want to say this works fine in the release. It just this version for some reason. I said to Mark this morning, "Oh my God, they're not working," but it works fine in the release. I apologize for that. But this gives you a chance to see everything if you're fond of a one-page view. Then the third tab is the container inventory, and this one is the ability to see a collection by container. And so what you can do is actually see, well, what do I have in box one? And then you can pull up everything within the box one. And then you can, if you have a lot, as you can see, you can move around in it and see what is in them, folder 8, that kind of thing. I wanted to show next just one of the archival objects, so while we're here. Okay, so this is an archival object, so this is one item, one folder within the container. Again, it shows where you are in the collection organization. It gives you the citation and requests. Because you're not at the collection level, it doesn't give you the ability to print, since print is for a PDF of the full collection. This is where the inheritance, that is a big part of the new ArchivesSpace PUI comes out, and I need to give a big shout out to Corey yet again, because it was really all his work on developing the spec we use for inheritance based on DAX that you're really going to see come through. I should also say inheritance is completely configurable in the new ArchivesSpace PUI, so it comes with a default setting, but if you don't like it, you get to change it. It's up to you. So in this case, you can see the extent because this folder doesn't have its own extent. It inherited the next highest extent, which was at the collection level. And again, with the expand all, you can see again an inherited creator from the collection and other information. I'm going to go back to the front page now and talk a little bit about the navigation bar at the top. In particular, I wanted to show off. I'm not going to show everything. Again, we'll talk more about it at the workshop, and I encourage people to explore what's there. But I wanted to show the repository pages because I really like these a lot. For those of you who are in an instance with more than one repository, and I'll just show my own, because why not? Because I made sure it was filled out fully, which always helps. In this case, you can see not only is this an opportunity to give contact information to users and provide information to help users navigate and find. It does this what is in this repository, which I really like, and gives people a chance to see, well, what is it, and also ability to search directly in just for that repository. So for some of you, if you're a multiple repository instance, it's going to be a really helpful way of seeing things. But you can immediately browse through all the collections and that kind of thing. And I just, since we're here, wanted to show, I mentioned an additional filters. The ability, if there's a lot of filters, to open up and show more and less. And the filters are context sensitive, so you'll see different filters depending on where you're at. And finally, I wanted to just show a search for digital material. So in this case, you can tell when you get, we've got a list, quite a few results, because I just did a random keyword search, but in this case, you can see this first one is, the second has the digital image icon. And so we're going to click on that one. And this is a good example of a digital image that actually has three things. In this case, attached to this is the recto, reverso, and then a printing image. And this is configurable. What you put in there is, but obviously the title field is going to show up. Image one isn't perhaps the most evocative title, but and then this gives you information on the repository, but also on this page you can see you have the ability to see also what the digital image is linked to, so you know it's part of this collection. And the ability, as you can see, to put a thumbnail, which is a nice thing for users. So that's all I was going to show, and I think I'll turn it over to Mark to close out on what the future of the PUI is, and then we're going to take a few questions.
So thanks, Susan. Yeah, we had our backups here as well in case we lost the internet connection. So I've often, catch up there? Okay, great. So I've often said that this PUI enhancement project can be broken down into 3 distinct phases. The design phase, the development phase, and the release phase. Right now we're in the release phase, and the ArchivesSpace Wiki has recently been updated to include new documentation about the 2.1 version of the ArchivesSpace public interface, and this documentation is still in development as well, and hopefully will continue to grow and expand over the next month. Some of this documentation even includes a few tips about how to theme your new public interface. In honor of our host here at Portland State University, I decided to create a quick mock-up of the new PUI using a PSU color scheme to commemorate today. Here, as a reminder, is the default homepage, and here's what things might look like using the PSU branding. Obviously, I didn't go very far. I could have added some, background images and other things, but I just wanted to give you a quick taste of, hopefully how these things will theme and change, and folks will implement the public interface now that it's been released. So my hope is that the development phase of the public interface will continue well after the release of 2.1. We already have a number of stories logged in JIRA that we weren't able to fit into the 2.1 release, including a few of the original Cherry Hill recommendations. And I have no doubt that the community will have feedback about how this new PUI works and doesn't work for their researchers and their staff once it has been deployed and they have time to use it on a day-to-day basis and to reflect on it. Please let your voice be heard so that the Users Advisory Council and the Technical Advisory Council can continue to prioritize new enhancement requests and bug fixes for this public interface. Whenever any of your institutions implement the public interface, please share what you learn and any plugins that you find to be useful. And also consider sharing any anonymized web analytics data with the community as well, since all of that feedback will be instrumental in the effort to continue to improve the ArchivesSpace public interface for all of us. At Yale, we will be starting our own implementation plan for the public interface next month, which I guess I should say is next week. And we hope to go live with this new interface in January. Also, we have already created one new plugin for the public interface, thanks again to Hudson Malonglo. So expect to hear a lot more from us about our own implementation journey over the next 6 months. Finally, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who has been involved with the development of the new public interface in some way or in another. At last year's SAA, when Susan and I gave a project update, we showed a slide that included 40 names, and I no doubt forgot to include some folks that I should have at that time. This year, the total is up to 52 names, and once again, I've probably forgotten to include a few folks that I should have. For that, I apologize, but if your name should be up here but isn't, or possibly worse, if it is up here and I've mistyped it, please let me know, and I will fix those mistakes. I think we have time. So one last time, I'd just like to thank Tom, Lori, Jungling, Melissa, Richard, James, Lisa, Maureen, Mara, Mark, Jessica, me, Amy, Kate, Molly, Krista, Maura, Chris, Dara, Bobby, Matt, Peyton, Matthew, Emily, Linda, Brian, Eric, Tommy, Bill, Francis, Susan, Robin, Laney, Rain, Corey, Elisa, Kate, Susan, Mike, Scott, Martha, Mariella, Anna, Claren, Angela, Kaylee, Randy, Amanda, Lydia, Mark, Brad, and Melissa. And I also just, again, I know it's been the morning of thank yous, but also, again, close by saying thank you to everyone in the ArchivesSpace community as well. It looks like we do have a good 5 minutes or so for questions. And so this is just a screen grab of doing a search for the word questions in our test corpus that we've been using over the past year. And this literally is how it comes out of the box right now. I didn't mock this up at all. It literally does have the first three results are 2 from one of the Yale finding aids and 1 is from Houghton's, which I think is pretty appropriate. And despite the first search result, I do encourage folks to ask silly questions as well. But if there are time for questions, yeah, please come up.
Hello, I'm Jess from the Congregational Library and Archives in Boston, and I noticed that the container list is prioritized by box container rather than, because we don't prioritize physical location. So how can you speak to, like, if you have like one random thing that is part of your series that isn't in your box 1 but is intellectually supposed to go between folder 5 and 6? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, maybe I should pull up. And I'll repeat the question. So there was a question about, it looked like the way the new public interface is set up is that it's making those, the container information in a list order. But actually, the way this is set up is, go back. Corey doesn't mind, I'll use this same Brigham Young record as an example. So in the finding aid order, it is, the intellectual order is represented exactly as it's been described by the archivist. So if I either look at it in this, probably this is not a very hierarchical finding aid. If I look at it in this view, it's going to be, it has nothing, it doesn't matter what box container order this is reflected in at all. This could start at box 22, this could be box 1. There's no bearing on that whatsoever. It's only when you actually go to the container inventory section, when by default this is trying to just sort these in box orders. It's not perfect. If you have box 10A, that's not going to sort correctly. It's really just doing a string sort. So it's just going to be sorting things like oversize 1, oversize 2, oversize 3, and if there's box 1, et cetera, that would just be intermixed in this listing. So this is the only place where it's trying to sort this just essentially in the container indicator order. But the information that's actually in these will still be just listed as they are in the finding aid. So when you actually go back and link to them. This is one of those things there was actually a feature request from the user community before we even started with the Cherry Hill Design Company to enable a way to just basically see a physical arrangement of the collection side by side with the intellectual arrangement. There was a lot of discussion among the 14-member team about whether this is something that should even be in a public interface. But I think Cherry Hill and a number of us on that group recognize that sometimes for public services, and sometimes for researchers as well, if you've been working with the collection for a long time, you know that, hey, I requested box 5, I saw it 2 weeks ago. I just want to get a quick peek and see what's in it without having to comb through the entire finding aid. This is the way to do it without having to just ask the staff to do it on the staff interface side. And this is actually kind of bringing out some of the data that's been added to the staff interface with the archives, with the top container plugin that became part of the core code, and I believe it was version 1.5. And it's adding a few extra features that we didn't have in the staff interface, and I hope they make their way back into the staff interface, such as adding these additional filters. This has been one of those things for our use in the staff interface that we've really wanted to do for a long time, is not just see what's in a box, but know, like, I need to find, folder 10 and go directly to it without having to do a search. The facets actually allow you to do that now, at least in the public interface. So hopefully that answered your question, but if not, we'll have more documentation, and if you're a part of the workshop, we'll talk about that this afternoon as well.
So the thing I really like about this sort of peek into the box is it lets you slice and dice your archival data in all sorts of different ways. And I might have missed this, but are there other ways that you can sort of sort or filter or facet your archival data so that you could do it chronologically if you have normalized states for everything, or alphabetically, or use sort of other ways that you as a researcher might want to approach this archival data?
Yeah.
And so we can just show, I didn't go over that because I was afraid of the time, but if we can call it, there are certain ways.
Yes, so I think there's a lot of other things that we'll hopefully start to, think about and expand and develop a public interface, but this is one of those things that, we can actually search for a span of years within a collection, which is something we, at least in our current system that we use at Yale, and I don't know if your system at Harvard either, would allow you to do those types of searches. So we can do searching on dates now, and this is where it also becomes really important to get that data into the staff interface, because it's only going to do searches that's basically, it's only going to support the data that you have in the system. But we can do, a search on, actually I probably should check the collection level date range here. I don't want to exclude things. So let me go to 1930, since this is only from 1900 and 1930. I don't think we actually had this broken out right now, so it's just inheriting the date span from the collection throughout the collection, and it's going to be for everything. But if we would break this out to where we actually had the atomized dates normalized at those lower levels, then you can actually hone in on all those things that are, either before 1930 in this collection. And even though the sorting default's still to relevance, we've added a year ascending and year descending so that they can be sorted that way. But again, it's only going to be supported when that data is actually there. And I think these labels and things are still some better ways to do that, ascending, descending, and how we actually want to explore that. But that functionality has been built into it. We still need to get some of the data in there to support it and think about other ways to slice and dice it, I think.
That's really exciting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay.
It just shows the importance of the data.
Yeah. I always have to remember to hit the sort button. That's one thing I forget to do sometimes when I resort something.
Good morning, Christy Peterson, Smith College. I was thrilled to hear the word customizable multiple times in the presentation. And I wonder if you could speak to for a moment about customizable by whom and what kind of skills would be necessary. Are we talking web developer? Are we talking Rails developer? What are we talking?
I think we're still exploring that ourselves. But I think this is one of the things that we definitely want to hear from the community about the ease of customization. So out of the box, just like the staff interface, it's using what's known as the yet another markup language or a YAML file to customize the labels. Those are more easily, again, you have to have some type of server access to even, implement and get those changes updated. You also have to restart the application. It doesn't actually just load that data on the fly. So there are layers of customability, but I believe right now to do things, we really want to theme something, you're going to have to basically build another, what they would call a public WAR file, and just drop that in your application to get a lot of those advantages. It's not as themable, say, like a Drupal site or something. I think the way that those things are built out, that where you can just build those things and share them easily and just install a new plugin or something. I think a lot of that's still going to be developing, but every aspect of the application is meant to be overridable in some way. So, for instance, just as one example, we haven't changed this just yet, but as Susan alluded to, this was one of those things that went back and forth a lot of the group and realized, obviously, even with 14 members representing archives that were a variety, corporate archives, we had academic libraries, small historical society, et cetera. We were never going to appease everybody with every decision that we made, but we had to make what we tried to say were sensible defaults for everyone to make it as easy as possible. So for instance, the print button actually generates a PDF, but it does this on the fly. We have a lot of collections that are really large at our institutions, and I know that we are not going to be able to do this on the fly because it could take upwards of 10 minutes, and we just can't have someone waiting to generate a PDF. So we're going to override that part of the application. Hopefully it didn't take too long there. We're going to override that part of the application to just have this link out to a static file that's been updated hopefully on a nightly basis. So that's one way that we're going to customize it with just a small plugin to override an action button. But in terms of the development, the skills and those things, I'm still not sure myself, but in exploring just doing theming development, it uses SAS, so that was something I had to start looking at and using. And SAS is, I forget exactly what it stands for, but it's syntactically awesome style sheets or something like that. But for folks who are familiar with CSS, which is cascading style sheets, it's just like an evolution of how those things work as far as I understand it, and allows you a lot more power in writing those files and making them hopefully more maintainable because they can get quite large. So there's ways to override it that way, but it's not exactly simple, but we're still working on that documentation. So it's still a work in progress for sure. I don't know if you want to.
I think it's hard too, and you really want to have places with multiple repositories since it's just one, style sheet. And people did ask me where I at Harvard, could we have like different designs for each repository? And we could debate the pros and cons of that, but obviously not. And so the control needs to be somewhere too. But I'd love to see it maybe move to an easier way of doing it, because it just sometimes drives you crazy that you have to have server access just to change a label or something like that.
Yeah, Jordan. And I think we're eating into a little bit of the break time, but I think that's fine.
Sorry.
No, I think we should.
Yeah, just a quick question. So, collections and record groups,
right.
Is the assumption there that collections denote manuscript collections and record groups are collections of institutional records?
Mark's going to make me talk.
No, I'm happy to jump in.
No, record groups are really was something devised for. It was, I believe, Archon who really wanted.
Classification.
Yeah, it's a classification functionality.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
so basically, if I click collections, suppose I have an interface where I suppress that record group label, and I have a repository that has both collections of institutional records and manuscript collections. If I click collections, I'm getting
Everything, yeah.
the whole kit and caboodle. Okay,
Absolutely, yeah. So about that, I should have mentioned in my thing, yeah, record groups is really the opportunity to use classification and group things, and as you can see, even subgroups, and bring these things together. Good question, thanks.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I learned quickly on in this process. Is we were still beholden to the way the staff interface was set up with ArchivesSpace. So I had some ideas, and Brad nodding, in terms of I would have loved to see a more of a marriage of the digital objects and their linkages in the public interface. But there still is that same separation you have in the staff interface between those right now. And sometimes it was just, it was just easier to keep it that way. And that's the same way the classifications work as well. Since they're shared across all of the repositories like agents and subject records, they're going to be shared across everything here. So if you would suppress this view, it'd be suppressing it for everyone. But that doesn't mean that some folks could, actually the way the system is set up and configurable, that you could have record groups suppressed on some of your repository pages but show up on others for the ones who are actually using it. Then it would be up to you to decide whether you want this to be an option here. And just as one example for the afternoon workshop, this is one of the use cases I was planning to talk about. And the use case essentially was, record groups. What? That's an odd name. I'd call them Schuzzwazzers. And we'll talk, that's a Simpsons reference of how to use the YAML file to change record groups to whatever you would actually, would make more sense in your context, whether it's classifications or something else. Quickly turn things back to Christine.
So thank you to Mark and Susan. They, as they've said, they're teaching a workshop this afternoon that some of you are signed up for, so you can take a deeper look into some of these things that they've introduced this morning. They'll also, of course, be around the forum today. Feel free to, maybe I shouldn't offer this, but feel free to go up to them and ask them questions. And there's also a session that Susan's going to be on at the main SAA conference later this week, where she's going to be talking about the public user interface and the design process for it. So we know this is a topic you're very interested in. There will be other opportunities to learn more about it in the future. But for now, please do provide us feedback on what you want to know and what you're doing with the public interface, as Mark said. So now we've got a short break. The next part of the program, we're going to have a few different speakers talking about different things going on in different parts of the application, different specifications that have been written, different kinds of ways the application can interact with other applications. So if you come back here at 10:45, those presentations will start. And if I could just ask the people that are presenting in the next section to come up, we'll make sure we get everything loaded onto the computer here. Thanks.